This is group number 3, aka In High Demand's video project for immigration policy and AGB 312 for the fall of 2016. Our topic will focus on immigration policy, specifically within the dairy industry in California.
In the U.S., the state that produces the most dairy milk is California. California is responsible for producing 40.9 billion pounds of milk each year. This accounts for 19.6% of all of the milk in the United States. In addition, California also produces 40% of the dairy that is exported from the United States. Dairy farming is a leading agricultural commodity in California. In 2002, according to a study done on behalf of the California Milk Advisory Board, the state's dairy industry generated almost 258,000 full-time jobs, and dairy-associated economic activity amounted to $35.1 billion. Currently in California, there are 1,400 dairy farms who house 1.74 million milk-producing cows. That means that 1 out of every 5 dairy cows in the U.S. is from California. 99% of these farms in California are family-owned. In 2015, Tulare County was the highest milk-producing county in California, producing more than 27% of the state's milk. After looking at these statistics, it is clear to see that not only does California's economy rely on the dairy industry, but the entire nation relies on California for its milk production. It is no secret that California wouldn't be near as successful in the dairy industry if it weren't for immigrant workers. Half of all workers on U.S. dairy farms are immigrants, and a nationwide survey of farms found that 1/3 of all U.S. dairy farms employ foreign-born workers. Milk operations function around the clock 365 days a year. Without immigrant labor, dairies would close, output would drop, and consumers would pay almost twice as much for milk.
Unlike farms that operate seasonally, dairy operations run constantly, 365 days a year, which makes short-term guest worker programs not ideal for the situation. As with other jobs in the food system, the outdoor work and irregular hours deter many citizens who have other labor options. One article quotes a California dairy farmer saying, "I haven't had a non-Hispanic want to do this work in 10 years. In a CNN article, dairy farmer Mike McMahon says, "It's so easy to blame these Hispanic workers for taking their jobs," said McMahon, a Republican who admits to hiring workers with questionable documentation. But he added, "I can tell you they're not taking jobs, they're filling holes. We need these people. I cannot get local workers to do the jobs that these guys are doing," and every other dairy farmer will say the same thing. A 2009 study by the National Milk Producers Federation found that half of all dairy farmers surveyed used immigrant labor, and 62% of the nation's milk supply comes from farms using immigrant labor. Without immigrant labor, dairies would close, output would drop, and consumers would pay almost twice as much for milk, according to a study funded by dairy producers. A complete loss of immigrant labor could mean the elimination of more than 7,000 dairy farms, 208,000 jobs, and a reduction in milk production by almost 50 billion pounds, the report found.
California dairy workers are heavily exploited, overworked, and abused. In his article, Hidden Horrors, R.M. Arrieta explains that the state agencies charged with enforcing labor, housing, and safety laws have neglected California dairy workers. Advocates lack the funds to collect data, publicize the abuses, and push for better laws and enforcement. Because of this, some owners continue to evade laws, and abused workers slip through the cracks. Abuse of undocumented workers in these environments presents itself in a number of different forms. Many of these workers are paid barely enough to eat, forced to work up to 16 hours a day without breaks or overtime pay, and forced to live in decaying buildings.
Workers are also marginalized and even criminalized in their own communities. At work, undocumented status makes workers especially vulnerable to abuse, as some employers and supervisors constantly hold the deportation card. For instance, if an employer is treating a worker unfairly, a worker who speaks up to their boss can be threatened with deportation. This significantly takes away their rights to stand up for themselves and advocate for their working conditions. Threats of detention and deportation add to the psychological stress of a job. Many of these issues can be solved if more focus was placed on facilitating an easier opportunity to legally work in California, and more resources were put towards helping immigrant workers become legal citizens. As we will see next, this is currently a tough process.
The process in becoming a documented U.S. citizen is rather lengthy at that. It starts with the applicant first having immigrated to the U.S. and then establishing residency after 5 years continuously living in the U.S., which in turn will make them a green card holder. Then they must apply for naturalization. Naturalization has multiple eligibility requirements, such as being at least 18 years or older when applying, being a person of good moral character, having the ability to read, write, and speak basic English, and a few other requirements. The applicant must meet all of these requirements before applying for naturalization via the N-400 form.
Once you determine your eligibility and submit the N-400 form, which has a $680 filing fee, keep in mind that there are only 2 filing offices in the whole country. Once your N-400 form has been submitted, you must attend a biometrics appointment to be fingerprinted and have a background check. You must pass the background check before you can move to the interview process. If by some means you miss your scheduled interview appointment, you would have to schedule another appointment, which may add several months to the process. After the interview, you will receive notice on the decision from the USCIS, and finally, you will take the oath of allegiance.
Solutions to these issues. Develop a dairy-specific work visa program, much like a H-2A program, only more long-term. Make work visa holding employees a priority for applied citizen status. Create a more efficient legalization process. Work on shifting focus and resources towards documentation process rather than directing all resources on border control. Lower the cost to apply for citizenship. Offer waived/discounted legal assistance throughout the process, and shortening processing times.
If our solutions go into effect, there will be more guarantee of security and prosperity for immigrant dairy workers in California, better working environments for these workers, a stable labor force resulting in a stable production, possibly enhanced production, and tax revenue generated from taxes on these working citizens.
If our solutions go into effect, the equality for the dairy industry workers would increase. Since they would be American citizens, they would have more rights and more labor regulations would apply to them. This benefits individuals in society. Although there are benefits to operating at equality, there are also costs in the industry. This could result in lower efficiency because dairies would have to spend more money on employee wages, which would cause milk prices to increase. However, in this situation, equality should trump efficiency. The short-term effects will have a negative impact, but over time, the societal benefit of having a stronger, dedicated workforce will be greater for the dairy industry in California.